Hey there everyone. Oh gosh, bloody hell, just almost knocked over this GoPro. I got bloody cameras all over my desk. Anyway, let's try that again. How are we doing, guys and gals, and welcome back. So in today's video we're going to review a how to ride a motorcycle tutorial in 15 minutes by a content creator called SoulCal Rider B. So I mean, I've done a video on how to ride a motorcycle. I think a lot of motor vloggers do that. It's, you know, just a way to get onto the platform kind of thing. And I mean, this video has got 2 million views. So we're going to check this one out. And basically we're going to rate how good it is from 1 to 10. And then throughout the kind of reaction, I suppose, as we watch it, we're going to kind of analyze what he's doing and whether or not it's something that I'd recommend you do as well. Because if you search on YouTube how to ride a motorcycle, this is one of the top videos that comes up. So let's jump right in, shall we?
Alright, what's up YouTube? In today's video, what we're going to be talking about is how to ride a motorcycle. This will be helpful for anybody that's never ridden a motorcycle before. If you're thinking about getting your first bike, you're a little concerned about what it's like to ride a bike, we're going to go through that. Or maybe you're that guy or...
Okay, so that's one of the biggest differences between here and the United States. In the United States, you can learn to ride on pretty much any motorcycle you want. Whereas here in the UK, you are restricted to 50cc if you are 16 and 125cc if you are 17.
Or gal that just said, I got a good deal on this motorcycle, I'm gonna buy it. You bought it, you don't know how to ride it, and you're afraid of getting on and doing the wrong thing. Or maybe you're just, like I said, you're thinking about getting a bike and you just want to know, what does riding look like? How do I do this thing? Is it for me?
I'll tell you what, I do actually agree with that kind of statement that he made, where, you know, you might have looked at a motorcycle, you thought it was cool, so you bought it, but you don't actually know how to ride it. That's actually quite a good way to get into motorcycles, because it kind of forces you, it kind of encourages you, because you've spent money on it, you know, so it kind of makes you think, right, I've got to make the most of this, otherwise it's a waste of money kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's the same here in the UK as well. Even if you haven't got a CBT, which is what you should have before you start learning to ride a motorcycle here, there's nothing wrong with buying a 125cc motorcycle and just practicing like this guy. I imagine how he's going to in a little parking lot, a little parking area, something like that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and you are allowed to do it. The one thing I would recommend that you do is get insurance, regardless of CBT or what have you. Get insurance on it, just in case you end up crashing it or something like that. I mean, if it's your first motorcycle, you're probably going to drop it. That's not necessarily a big deal, but if something a little more serious happens, then yeah, that insurance may come in handy, regardless of how expensive it might be if you are a 17-year-old.
Well, in today's video, it should cover that. What I will ask is that if this video is helpful to you, please please drop me a comment. Let me know if there was something that I missed or something that you wished I would have covered that I did.
Do that with my video as well, please. Thank you. Thank you, SoulCal Rider B.
We'll make sure to take care of that in another video. And then if you like this content that I've been putting out and what I'm gonna put out in the future, I just ask that you subscribe. I would love to have subscribers tell me what they want to see so that we can build this channel together and grow this channel together. All right, so let's get started. So first, we're gonna start.
I suppose that's one thing that I should mention before he gets into it. I mean, we're 1 minute into the video and he's done all the usual kind of YouTuber things, but definitely go and subscribe to this guy's channel. Okay, if you like what you see in this video today, then definitely go ahead and support the creator. I certainly will be after this as well, if it's any good anyway.
Start with what we call the cockpit of the bike. We're gonna work our way from the left side to the right side. After we go into the cockpit, I'm gonna go onto the left side of the bike towards the middle and the right side of the bike towards the middle, and we'll talk about what we got going on there. So first, right here, this is not a brake. I thought it was a brake, but it isn't. It is your clutch. Your clutch is what allows you...
I don't know how long he's been riding for, but he says he thought it was a brake, which kind of says to me that this guy hasn't been riding all that long. And it's a Ninja 400 as well, which isn't the biggest motorcycle in the world. I mean, in the United States, that would be classed as a starter bike, okay, a beginner motorcycle, and the dog is coughing. You alright, bud? You okay? Yeah, he's alright.
To transfer power from the front of the, or from the engine to the rear wheel of the bike, all right? This is your clutch. Right here, on this side, you have what they call a passing indicator. Basically, you click this, what it's gonna do, it's gonna make the lights on the bike flash a little bit brighter. You can use that to let people...
Well, that's the full beam, basically. It's just, you're just turning on the full beam. That's all that's doing.
People know that you're gonna pass. Although one good point they brought up in the safety course is sometimes this can be confusing. If you're clicking this to indicate that you're gonna pass as the motorcyclist, sometimes the cars can misread that and think you're telling them to pass.
That's why I wouldn't bother using it, because signals like that, they just get too confusing. And it's a good point to make, because I mean, it says pass on it, but I don't see any rider that's able to use that safely. Road systems are designed in a certain way. Just follow the road systems in your area and you should be all right. Just follow the rules, because everyone knows what to expect in that scenario.
Nevertheless, regardless of how you use it, this is what that button does. All right, coming right here, this is our low beam, this is our high beam.
Yep.
This switch right here with the triangles, this is our going left, going right. This is our signal indicators, okay? So you move that to the left signal indicator will come on. If you push this in, it'll cancel the signal indicator. Most bikes, well, at least this bike that I have, if you turn left, it's not like a car. So if you put this in left, if you move this left and you turn left and then you immediately turn the bike back straight, your signal light will still be on. So you gotta push this in the middle to cancel the signal light.
I do wonder if that's something that will end up coming to motorcycles at some point, especially on some of the more bigger touring-oriented motorcycles. There might be already a thing, I don't know. But yeah, it would be fascinating to find out if that's something that will come about in the future.
Now moving down here, this is our horn button. This lets our little baby horn that people can't hear. You push this and your little baby horn goes off.
Yeah, he's not
and
wrong.
No one knows you're there, so, but it's there, right? You got a horn. Moving towards the middle of the cockpit, what we have is our ignition. Some bikes have it, this one does. So obviously you have off, you have on, and then if you move your handlebars all the way to the left,
you can lock it.
Turn your ignition all the way to the left here, it'll lock the bike.
So one of the things that he hasn't mentioned, yeah, I mean, I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but in order to lock the handlebars, you have to actually push the key in. So you put the key in, but then you push it down a little bit further. You'll feel it going down a little bit, then it will let you lock it. And as well, sometimes if you have the handlebars too far over, it won't go all the way to lock the steering. So you might actually have to straighten it ever so slightly in order to engage the lock.
So that now the motorcycle can't, the handlebars in the front wheel can't move left and right. They're locked in place. Yeah. That's supposed to be an anti-theft device. How good is it? I don't really know, and I hope to never find out. This is a quad lock. It's a quad lock motorcycle mount. Lets me mount my cell phone here, vibration dampener, etc. If you guys want to see a video of how to install it,
is that a sponsorship spot?
I'll do that. I'll probably do a video about that, showing you how to install it, how to put the motorcycle vibration.
I see some sponsors of quad locks these days on motorcycle channels.
But that's not a part of the bike stock. It's just a little black thing right there. So, you know, like I said, if you've never ridden a motorcycle before, or you're wondering what that is, or you're extremely new to this, that's not stock right there. Now, this right here, this is our engine kill switch. When the switch is in this mode with this little circle with the X on it, even if the ignition is on and you push this button here, the engine's not gonna run. This is also a safety mechanism. You know, if something crazy happens while you're on the bike, you just shift it to here and it'll kill the engine.
Okay, so that's actually something we want to test out with our new motorcycle for the channel. If you haven't checked out that video yet, definitely go and check it out. It's just the journey of me and the wifey picking up a new motorcycle specifically for the channel. And we have got a video in mind where we are going to test what happens when you're riding and you accidentally hit that kill switch. So definitely hit like, get subscribed, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it.
This is actually how we start the bike right here. This little button right there. That actually starts the bike, and I'll show you in a second after we mount how we start the bike. This right here is our front brake. Two notable things about the front brake is if you barely squeeze the front brake without actually engaging the brake pads. I don't know if you can hear this little click here. that'll flash your rear brake lights. Usually it's a good habit to kind of tap this a little bit if you're at the stoplight. If there's no cars behind you, just kind of clicking that like that. If someone's on their cell phone and not paying attention, it could help you from being rear-ended. This is the...
I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. If someone is properly distracted, then they're going to miss it regardless. I mean, motorcycle lights are tiny. Yes, they help with visibility, but it probably wouldn't make that much of a difference in that scenario, in my opinion.
The throttle, you roll this back, and it is your throttle. It's what allows the bike to move forward, gives the bike more power. Down here, we have, second notable thing.
Wait, sorry. Okay, all right, he's going back to the bits that he's missed. He's going through quite a lot of the anatomy of the motorcycle. I mean, our video isn't like that. We kind of just talk a little about the controls, and I think we spend this amount of time, 5 minutes, just talking about the controls, and then we get on to riding the motorcycle. It's the main thing that people want to see. But I mean, well, we'll see where he goes with this.
I said two notable things. So that's the first notable thing about the front brake. The second notable thing is, keep in mind, if you've never ridden before, 70% of your stopping power comes from the front brake. The front brake does have the most power.
That is correct.
When you do brake, you don't want to grab what we call grabbing a handful of brake.
Yep.
You want to slowly, gradually squeeze on that.
That is correct.
Now,
so, what's going on here then? Going through the comments there of that video. Yeah, that is true. That is something that you want to avoid. When you grab the handle of a motorcycle, because you don't give it the chance to transfer the weight onto the front wheel, what happens is that the wheel just locks up and the bike just dive bombs to the ground. And that's something I've seen witnessed firsthand on, I think it might have been CBT training, but it might have been A2 license training. But yeah, this poor guy, brand new R125, or it was pretty new R125. It looked gorgeous, and we were doing emergency braking in this tiny little parking area, and that's exactly what happened. He jammed on that front brake far too much. The bike just dived. So it's up like this, and then bang, straight like that. It's bad. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that you need to learn. Don't apply too much brake when you first start riding. Apply gradual braking, and ride slow as you get to know the machine and as you get to know how to ride a bike or a motorcycle.
Coming down here to the left side of the bike right here, what we have is our shifting. This is how we shift the gears, okay? When the bike is in neutral, this is usually how most bikes work. Whatever bike you bought, I would say just play with it in a parking lot, or if you have access to the manual, just make sure that it works this way. But for the most part, most motorcycles are gonna work the way I'm gonna explain it here. When the bike is in neutral, if you push down one time, that will take you into first. That's one click down. If you push up one click, that'll take you into second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. To get into neutral, it's a half a click down from second. Or if you're in first gear, to get in neutral, it's a half a click up, okay? With this bike, and some motorcycles do have it, and I do love this feature about the Ninja 400, this bike has something called a positive neutral finder. So if the bike is at a standstill and you click, and you're in first gear and you click it up, even if it's a full click, it'll automatically find neutral for you. I love that feature.
Okay, so yes, what he kind of explained there was all correct. This first gear is pretty much more often than not the first push down. But one of the things that I would also add to this is you know you're in first gear when you can't push the lever down anymore. It will literally it will feel like it moves for all the other gears, but in first, when you try putting your foot down on it, it will not go any further. Same with sixth or fifth, depending on the kind of bike that you've got. If you try kicking it up past fifth or sixth, depending on what top gear you have in your bike, it will not go any further up. So that's how you know you're in first or sixth. I mean, he mentioned about half a click down from second and half a click up from first. Neutral is basically in between first and second gear. More often than not, what you'll be doing is, at least this is what I do most of the time, and this is probably what you're going to do, as you come to a stop, so say, I don't know, you're less than 10 mile an hour as you're approaching a stoplight or something like that, you'll end up pushing the gears down all the way to first, because then you know you're in first. And then when you come to a complete stop, if you're there for a while, kick it up into neutral.
Now, moving over here to the right side of the bike, what we have is the rear brake. This button here, or not button, but this lever here is our rear brake. 30% of our stopping power comes from the rear brake. Even though we got 30% back here and 70% up here, remember, we're going to want to squeeze both of those brakes at the same time. It's going to increase our stability when we're braking. It's going to help us stop faster with more power and in a more smooth manner.
Not necessarily. The front brake is going to be doing a lot more of the work than the rear brake. I mean, you'll get a lot of bikers that basically ignore the rear brake unless they are doing slow speed maneuvers like U-turns and things like that. More often than not, you're going to be using the front brake for all of your stopping. And pretty much the rear brake becomes redundant in that sense, because what happens? So as you start braking, the back end of the bike starts lifting up. So imagine my elbow is the front end of the bike and my fingertips are the back end of the bike. So as you apply the brake, the weight is going to shift forward like this towards the front wheel. Now what happens is that if you apply the rear brake in that instance, the rear brake hasn't got a lot of grip because there's not a lot of weight on it. So a lot of beginner riders kind of make the mistake of applying too much rear brake, and then the rear brake just skids, which kind of defeats the point of braking. Motorcycle, well, anything, a car or a motorcycle, whenever you're braking, you want the wheel to continue moving, because then you know you've got the grip to actually stop yourself. If you are skidding, then you are not slowing down, you're not stopping, or at least not stopping as effectively as you could be. That's where the whole ABS brakes come in. When you jam on that brake too much, instead of just locking up the wheel, it will very quickly kind of like do this to the wheel, so to try and give it as much traction as possible. But I mean, front brake is pretty much what you're going to be using most of the time.
All right, so now that we talked about the different sides of the bike, the levers, the gears, etc., the gear shifters, what we're going to do now is talk about how to properly mount the bike. So first thing is, if your handlebar is straight, it's usually easier. So you just want to turn the handlebar left. What that's going to do is make the bike lean over towards you more. Plus, when we get on, what you'll see is we're going to turn those handlebars straight. If you have a heavier bike, by turning those handlebars straight, it's going to allow the bike to stand up on its own. So that's a win. So first thing we're going to want to do, we're going to grip the left handlebar right here. We're going to take our right hand. We're going to reach over, squeeze the front brake, kick our leg over, straighten out the handlebars. Now we're mounting. Okay, we mounted.
I didn't want to get...
Right, let's just get through this advert whilst I explain what's going on there. So pretty much, he didn't explain why you'd grab onto the front brake when you are mounting it. I mean, it's quite an obvious reason, but you don't want the bike to move whilst you are trying to get on it. I'm sure there are riders out there that get on their bikes without applying any brake whatsoever, but it is always a safer idea to put on the front brake. It's a good habit to get into, holding onto that front brake whilst you mount the bike. It's the same if you are going to start taking a pillion rider as well. I always have the front brake on when the wifey is trying to get on the back or something like that, because it just keeps the bike a lot more stable. Right, these adverts look like they finished, so let's move back over to see what this guy says about how to start a motorcycle. Okay.
All right, so now that we've properly mounted the bike, let's talk about starting the bike. Starting the bike's pretty simple. First thing, we're gonna take our left hand, we're gonna grab this clutch, we're gonna squeeze it. Second, we're gonna take our hand here, we'll turn our ignition key, we'll let our dashboard come on. We wanna look for the bike to be in neutral. If you don't have a gear indicator switch that shows first, second, third, neutral, etc., just look for a little green N or some type of N that's lit up on your dash. That'll let you know you're in neutral. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead, and we're gonna turn our engine kill switch from killing the engine to not killing it.
It's interesting. It doesn't really explain why the kill switch is kind of used. A lot of riders, including myself, just as a force of habit, will just, when we turn the bike off, we use the kill switch. We just switch it on whilst the bike is just off. So if you park it, we just turn it on, or well, excuse me, flip the switch, so the kill switch, so it doesn't start the bike. But there's no real reason why you should do that, to be honest with you. So if you wanted to leave your kill switch engaged, that's quite funny, that's a band, kill switch engaged, it's one of my favorite bands. If you want to leave that on, there's nothing wrong with that, because as soon as you take the key out of the bike, there's no power going to anything anyway.
The engine. Once again, we're gonna move this from the little circle with the X in it to the circle with no X in it. Once that's done, we're gonna...
Some of them as well aren't designed like that. On my ZH2 and on quite a few Yamaha motorcycles that I've seen, it's not a rocker switch like that. It's more of, I mean, it kind of, it is a switch, but it's a little bit weird. It's more like a, so you get your thumb on it, you slide it downwards. You know, you don't press it, you slide it downwards. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. But I mean, well, what I'll do, I'll see if I can find quickly just an example of that. So Kawasaki ZH2, right, handlebar. Let's see here. So there's an image of the left handlebar. Right, so let's see here. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. I mean, I've gone onto a website here, but come on, they've got loads of images though of the ZH2. That's quite cool. So you might not be able to see this. Let me zoom in. So you see that area here. So it looks a lot different to that kill switch, the red kill switch. That's quite a traditional design, but this one is the kill switch and the starter combined. So I mean, like in this one here, where you can see the starter is oh, you can't really see it because I'm in the way. Let me move myself down a little bit here. So his finger is on the starter button here. Basically,
I'm gonna push our starter button right down.
It's all combined into this thing. So you flip it down with your thumb, and then you push it down a little bit more to start the bike up. Just thought it was a little thing to add in there. I probably didn't need to add that little bit of information, but I mean, it is valuable information just in case the motorcycle you end up riding first doesn't look like this, if you know what I mean.
Down here, and the bike's gonna start. Once we've started the bike, we're gonna slowly, and I mean very slowly, release that clutch. Even though the bike is in neutral and we know it's in neutral, the reason we're gonna slowly release the clutch is we wanna get in the habit of good clutch control. We don't wanna be doing this. You get in the habit of doing that, you get killed out there. So remember, it's not practice that makes perfect, it's perfect practice that makes perfect.
That's quite a good little quote there. It's not practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice that makes perfect. That's quite clever. I like that. I mean, yeah, he's kind of mentioning good habits. You will get to a point where even if the bike is in first and you start disengaging the clutch quickly, you'll feel the bike kind of in gear kind of thing. So instead of making yourself look silly and stalling the bike, you might actually be able to pull that clutch back in quickly.
Using our left leg, we push down and get the bike in the first gear. Notice that the neutral light is gone. If this is your first time riding, you'll notice that the bike, when you put it in first gear, will make a clunking noise and it will jump forward like this. That's normal. Your bike's not broken. Unless you bought it used from someone shady on Craigslist. Then I can't help you. But now that we're in first gear, all we're gonna do Even though our hand is on the throttle, we're not giving it gas. We are not doing this. This bike will jump from underneath you. First gear is usually gonna have your most torque. So all we wanna do to get the bike rolling and underway is slowly release the clutch. And I want you to listen for that friction zone. I'm gonna hit the friction zone 3 times. And when we're hitting that friction zone, we're gonna just keep slowly releasing and the bike's gonna move on its own. But I want you to listen for that friction zone. Listen, see if you can hear it.
Well, that's the revs going down.
One more time. And friction. You hear that? It's like a whining noise. One more time.
This is really good because this is the exact same technique that we teach whenever we are doing these riding tutorials and things like that for beginners. And one of our most successful videos is basically how to master clutch control on any motorcycle. And we do it on the Wife's 125 Ninja, and it is exactly the same. So this might be a Ninja 400, but this technique still works on even smaller bikes, on 125s. It is a little bit harder because you don't have as much power to get you going, as much torque to get you going just riding on the clutch, but you are able to do it. And if anything, it gets easier the bigger the bike you ride, because you have that extra torque.
That's normal. That's our friction zone. When we're there, we want to slowly release. So we're going to hit the friction zone and release, and the bike will start moving on its own, just like this. Now, notice this hand is free. I'm not giving the bike any gas. If you want to come to a parking lot like I'm at, you can come to a parking lot, practice getting the bike in the friction zone, or if you're at your house in a neighborhood where there's not a lot of busy traffic, practice getting the bike in the friction zone. That'll help. So what I'm gonna do is, before I give it some throttle, I'm gonna disengage the clutch with the left hand, and you'll see that the bike's gonna stop, and then we'll start again with just the clutch. Okay? So there, one more time. We want to get underway. All we're gonna do is put the clutch in the friction zone, and the bike will move on its own.
So there's one thing I do want to mention here about this technique. This is a very good technique for a lot of modern motorcycles, because as the computer in the motorcycle starts detecting that it needs more fuel, so it needs higher revs and things like that, the computer in the bike kind of helps you with that, because it chucks more fuel into the cylinders to give you a little bit of extra power. So this is why it works on a lot of modern bikes. However, on carbureted motorcycles, it's still doable, but it is more difficult because there is no computer managing the amount of fuel that goes into the cylinders. And of course, if you didn't know, more fuel equals more power. So with some carbureted motorcycles, especially smaller ones, 125cc's and things like that, you may need to give it a little bit of gas, maybe. But this is still the technique that I would recommend that you use the very first time you are learning to ride a motorcycle. Just ignore the throttle entirely and just focus on getting the bike moving forward with just the clutch. You can do the same thing in a car as well. I don't know why driving instructors don't teach that. I know that's not how I was taught, but it's honestly, it works. Just get that bike moving forward on just the clutch.
Simple. All right, now simple. Let's give it some gas and move into stopping the bike. So just a little bit of gas. It doesn't take much to move the bike in first gear. My recommendation would be, especially if you're a newer rider, come to a parking lot and just ride around in first gear. It may look pretty simple how I'm, riding at 6 miles an hour in first gear.
It's hard.
It's not as easy as it looks.
Yep.
I used to screw it up a lot and get the bike jumping like a freaking Bronco from Texas. But
it's so true. Riding a motorcycle slowly is actually harder than riding a motorcycle at normal speeds.
Come to a parking lot, practice throttle control, give it a little bit more gas. You see? That's all in first gear.
It is true that one of the things that a lot of beginners do is that they really crank that throttle back, and I did it. Okay, when I was 16, and I learned to I did my CBT on a scooter, so I learned to ride first on a scooter. That's the very first thing that I did, despite the fact that the instructors said don't do this. Guess what? The first thing I did when I got in it was no, that's not what you should do. But I'm sure that's something that a lot of beginners tend to do.
So stopping the bike, we're gonna slowly release the throttle. Slowly. Because if we release it too fast, it'll jerk. And I'll show you what that jerking looks like. If I'm like this, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, the bike lurches forward. It throws me, right?
Yeah.
So we want to get that throttle control. But stopping the bike is simple. All we do is slowly release the clutch, slowly squeeze the front and rear brake at the same time, shift up, back into neutral.
That's one thing I've never spoken about actually, is that whole like jerky movement that you get if you just let go of the throttle, because of course the throttle has a spring mechanism that will basically turn the cable or rotate the cable back to closed every time by default, and those springs can be quite strong. So it's having that full control in your hand is always the best thing that you want. You never ever want to take your hand off the throttle, especially when you have the throttle even slightly open.
To stop the bike, slowly roll off the throttle with the right hand while opening the clutch with the left hand, simultaneously braking with the front brake and the rear brake.
So he said opening the clutch there, which is the correct term, but he basically means pulling in the clutch lever.
Slow, gradual squeeze on the front and rear brake, moving the bike into neutral by shifting up. Hitting our engine kill switch here first. Now, some people will hit the ignition first. Some people hit the engine kill switch. I do the engine kill switch because that's how I was taught in the motorcycle safety course. And their argument for that is you want to hit the kill switch first because it gets you in the habit of killing the engine with the kill switch. That way, if there's ever an accident or, something crazy happening where you need to kill the bike quickly, instead of taking your hand from here and trying to reach over, it's just a quick button, right?
That's interesting. I don't know if I agree with that necessarily, because I mean, any experienced motorcyclist will know that that's how you kill the motorcycle anyway. I suppose for a beginner getting into that habit, that's possibly a good thing, but so it's quite funny because a kill switch, I can't remember if this is exactly true or not, but the whole kill switch idea was introduced by legislation, I think, in the United States, but nowhere else in the world that I'm aware of is it mandatory to have a kill switch on a motorcycle. But because it is law, I think, in the United States that motorcycles have to have a kill switch, the manufacturers just rolled out kill switches to every motorcycle they exported around the world. It doesn't really make much of a difference. I mean, if you are in a crash or something like that and you got to turn the bike off, you're not exactly moving at that point anyway. So it's easy enough just to turn your bike off. And I mean, that's the very first thing you should do, even if you just drop the bike. To be honest, turning the key in the ignition for me is a better way of turning the bike off anyway, because then it's not just going to magically start by itself. I mean, imagine if there was a short or something like that somewhere in the electrical system, and somehow the kill switch got flipped on, then the bike could start itself. I can't imagine that happening either. But with the key in the ignition turned off, there's no way that the bike can start itself. I mean, well, literally that example that I just gave. I mean, if there was a short or something like that, that's exactly how you'd hotwire the bike to begin with, isn't it? So I don't know. Kill switches, they do the exact same thing as turning off the ignition, pretty much. They just leave the electrics on, but literally cut the power to the engine. Yeah, interesting.
Turn off the ignition, steering wheel, turning the handlebars to the left, dismounting. And that's how you ride a motorcycle. Super easy, right?
Interesting. That was it. So I mean, this video, for those of you who didn't know, it's entitled "How to Ride a Motorcycle in 15 Minutes." Now, can you really learn how to ride a motorcycle in 15 minutes? No, you can't. That's one of those things that you do have to spend a little bit of time doing, a day, 2 days, 3 days, to really get used to the controls and the handling of a motorcycle at kind of like the slow speeds. Then when you get confident enough, take it out onto the road, see how you get on out there. But I mean, you should know how to ride a motorcycle fairly competently within a few hours. I mean, that's kind of how it goes here in the UK with the CBT. They give, I think it's 6 hours of training. Half of that is theory and in a controlled environment, and then the rest of it is out on the roads. But I mean, yeah, pretty much most of the information that you needed to know was in there. I do approve of the techniques that were used in this video, so I think it is a fairly decent source to give you an idea of how a motorcycle works. But of course, when it comes to all these things, applying the techniques that he was demonstrating in this video, that's one of the things that is going to take, that's what you need to do. Okay, you're not going to know how to ride a motorcycle just from watching this video. So, but I mean, yeah, I'd say pretty much 7 out of 10 for this instructional video. I think it's really good. I mean, the one that we did, it's kind of like a two-parter. One where we go around how the motorcycle works in a controlled environment, but then part 2 is actually how do you ride a motorcycle kind of on the street. You know, when you first start riding a motorcycle, it's one thing knowing how to ride, it's another thing entirely knowing how to ride on roads and things like that. But yeah, all in all, pretty decent video. I would recommend it. So I'm gonna go ahead and subscribe to SoulCal Rider B. Here we go. You can see me do it. Bang, there we go. Subscribe to his channel. So I recommend that you guys go and do the same thing. Pretty decent instructional video, especially considering that I think he's a fairly newish rider looking at the bike that he's got. But yeah, I mean, being able to explain newbie things in a newbie way is by far the best way of getting that information across to new riders. You know, if you are a new rider, you know, or if you think like a new rider, then you're going to be able to transmit that information or pass on that information to another newbie rider to try and get them to understand, especially if they don't quite know how it works. Now, I mean, in this situation, I would recommend that you would look up how a motorcycle engine actually works, how the clutch works, not in a complicated way or an in-depth way, but just have a basic knowledge of how a motorcycle works. I mean, one little example before we finish up here. I know it's been quite a long one. It's nearly 40 minutes, so sorry for keeping you for this long. But a clutch is connected physically to a clutch pack on the right-hand side of the motorcycle, quite close to where your rear brake foot is. And you can actually see, if you operate the clutch, you can actually see what it pulls on. And so if for whatever reason your clutch cable breaks and you can't get the bike in gear, you can't get the bike out of gear, then that's another way you can get the bike in or out of gear, because it's a lever on the clutch pack. So you literally twist that lever open, and then you should from there be able to move the gear lever up and down fairly freely. You might need to move the bike forward a little bit to engage and disengage certain gears. But I mean, again, that's something you don't necessarily need to know when you're learning to ride a motorcycle, but it's something handy to know, I don't know, if for whatever reason you break down or something. And your first bike isn't exactly going to be your most reliable motorcycle, I wouldn't have thought. So knowing little things like that can get you out of a pickle every now and then. But anyway, thank you ever so much for watching this this video. I mean, I'm looking to do videos like this in future again. So let me know what you guys think about this kind of format here in the comments. But I mean, yeah, I think this is a good experience, a good learning experience for both myself and for you guys, because I don't want you guys looking on YouTube and there being a bad reference on how to ride a motorcycle. I have no doubt that there are tons of videos out there that give you the wrong information. But I mean, anyway, this one was pretty good, I think, all in all. But anyway, thank you so much again for watching. Take care, ride safe, leave a like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell as well so you don't miss anything that we release in future. That is actually something that I've noticed recently on my own YouTube feed for the channels that I've subscribed to. I'm not seeing their videos in their feed all that much because I haven't hit that notification bell. So definitely do that if you want to continue supporting us, so you don't want to miss what we do. But yeah, thanks again, take care, we'll catch you all in the next video. Have a good one.